Rose is a hardworking therapist who spends her days mostly at work. One day, after visiting Carl, her usual patient, the hospital brings in another patient, a young girl named Laura. Laura was the witness of her teacher's suicide, and the teacher bludgeoned himself to death with a hammer. Rose starts talking to her, and she starts with a simple question like the date. Laura insists and says that she's not crazy, and something that looks like other people follows her around with a creepy smile. Rose thinks that she's traumatized, and when she wants to speak to her, Laura starts to scream, and this makes Rose to call for backup. Rose hangs up the phone and sees Laura behind her with a smile on her face. She has a broken piece of a vase in her hand, and then she cuts her throat, but her smile does not fade away. And Rose sees everything. After this incident, two cops show up to talk about what happened, and Rose says that Laura probably was traumatized and it made her have hallucinations, and that's the reason that she committed suicide. Rose goes home and feeds her cat, takes a shower, pours herself a drink, but she sees Laura in the corner staring at her. She breaks the glass. Trevor, Rose's boyfriend, comes in, and they have to go to dinner with Holly, Rose's sister, and her husband. Rose is not feeling well the whole time. Holly invites her to her son's birthday, but Rose says that she has to work. When Holly tells her that she is spending a lot of time at work, but she doesn't get paid enough, Rose tells her to shut up, and I can only imagine how awkward the rest of the dinner went. Next day at work, one of the cops, Joel, shows up and wants to talk to Rose, and it looks like he had a story with Rose. But she says that she's fine, and Joel leaves. Then Rose takes Laura's file and reads it, and she sees that Laura's teacher was smiling at the time of his suicide, just like Laura. Then, while she's walking in the hospital, she sees Carl smiling at her. She goes and talks to Carl, and all of a sudden, Carl says,
"You're going to die! You're going
Rose
to
panics
die!"
and calls for backup. But when backup comes, Carl is calm. After this, her boss wants to see her, and he tells her that she needs to take a few days off because she has been working a lot lately. On her way home, she buys a gift for her nephew and wants to go to his birthday to take her mind off of work. At night, the alarm of the house goes off and one of the doors is open. Then the phone rings and someone asks for her client number, and when Rose gives it to her, she says,
"Are you alone in the house, ma'am?
Yes.
Are you sure?
What?
Are you sure you haven't let something inside, Rose? Look behind you."
Then the phone rings again, and it's the same woman. She calls the cops to come, but like every other movie, they don't do anything and they leave. She looks for her cat, but she can't find it. At night, when she goes to bed, an old nightmare haunts her. When she was a child, she found her mother's dead body, and she was the one who had to call for help. The next morning, she goes to talk to her therapist and asks her for some medications, but her therapist tells her that they need to have more sessions before giving her any other drugs. After that, Rose goes to her nephew's birthday and he's opening his gifts one by one. When he opens his aunt's gift, he sees a dead cat inside. Rose starts to cry and sees the girl smiling at her in the corner. She hugs her cat, but she trips and falls on the table and cuts herself. Trevor picks her up from the hospital and they return home. Rose explains what's happening to her and says that she's not crazy, but Trevor does not believe her. Rose found the address of Laura's teacher, and the next day she goes to his house. She talks to his wife, and the wife tells her about the changes of her husband before death, and when she takes Rose to the teacher's home office, Rose sees a lot of paintings of smiling people. But then the wife says that her husband's behavior changed when he saw a woman killed herself in front of him. Then Rose talks to Joel and asks him for help. Joel uses his sources to find who killed herself in front of the teacher, and the woman is called Angela, and Angela saw someone kill themselves a few days before. Rose takes copies of the cases and goes to talk to Holly to show her that she is not crazy. They get into a fight again, and Holly says that she is sorry that she wasn't there and it was Rose who had to see their mother like that. Rose gets upset and sits in her car, but Holly comes out of the house again, and says this to Rose.
Holly.
At night, Joel calls Rose and says all the files are linked and there are more than 20 people linked with this case, and there is only one survivor and he's in jail for murder. Rose and Joel go to the prison and the man wants to talk to Rose alone. Whatever he says matches perfectly with what Rose sees, and at the end, the man says that the entity feeds on people's trauma, and in order to be rid of it, she has to kill someone as brutal as possible, but she must do it in front of another person. Rose returns home and looks at her files again. While she's going through them, her therapist comes to check on her. Rose says that she's tired of everyone telling her that she's crazy and traumatized, and while she's talking, her phone rings. She picks up the phone and guess who is on the other line? Boom! It's her therapist. Rose is terrified and a creepy smile starts to form on the therapist's face. She tells Rose that she only has one day left. After this, Rose takes a knife and goes to the hospital. She has had it. She goes to Carl's room and Carl starts to scream after seeing her. Her boss comes in and Rose starts to stab Carl to death in front of him to pass the curse to him. Suddenly, she wakes up in her car in front of the workplace and decides to leave and go somewhere to be alone. In this way, she can break the curse. She goes to her childhood house where her mother died. She locks herself in and waits. After a while, she hears voices from her mother's bedroom. She goes in and sees her mother, and her mother apologizes, but Rose knows that it's not her mom. Then, the creature takes its true form and attacks Rose. They fight for a few minutes, and Rose says that they are in her mind and she can't be defeated. She breaks the monster's hand and burns the monster with an oil lamp. She leaves the house on fire and goes to tell Joel that it's over. Joel was calling her and checking up on her all this time and she owes it to him. She thinks. She tells Joel that she is tired and only wants to sleep and asks Joel to stay beside her. Joel says that he will stay with her forever. Then a creepy smile forms on his lips. Rose looks around and she is still in her childhood house. And worst of all, Joel tracked her phone and calls for her. Rose confronts the creature one last time, but this time the creature wins and enters her body. Joel breaks the door and comes in, but it's quiet. He finds Rose and Rose looks at her with a smile on her face, covered in gasoline. Then she lights a match and sets herself on fire while smiling. That was the recap of the movie Smile. For more recaps, don't forget to subscribe and like this recap if you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.